Retro Groove. Enjoy your voyage.
Howdy, and welcome to Retro Groove. I'm Adam C.
And I'm Liam D.
And this is a podcast where we talk about the music that stands the test of time, the albums and artists that have shaped and reshaped the sonic landscape, as well as covering new music from those artists. Today, we have a special guest with us who's going to be joining us on side B, our very own Dan Caparello, the brainchild and the mastermind behind the entire Retrologic network, and we're very excited to have him on for the first time. So we'll be talking with him for our spotlight on side B. First, we're going to get into what we've been listening to recently, a community question or two, and then look at this week in music history. But before we get too far, Liam, how's it going, brother?
Pretty good, 4th of July weekend, nice long weekend, taking it easy, trying not to think about work stuff too much, and trying to keep my kid calm as fireworks just take over a neighborhood. I don't know how it is with you guys, but like everyone here just was lighting them off last night, and it was probably like from sunset until almost 10:30, 11 o'clock at night, just a consistent rumble. That she was excited about it initially and then was not having it whatsoever. So
yeah, that last night was definitely a melatonin kind of night. So it gets pretty crazy around here. It more goes until like 1-2 o'clock in the morning here.
Wow.
But yeah, thankfully I haven't heard any tonight though. So, cause a lot of times you get like the people that for whatever reason we found a bunch of more and they'll light them off on the 5th. But thankfully we haven't really had that this year.
Nice.
But yeah, mostly just, relaxing and spending time with family and stuff like that.
Cool.
So I'm excited today to get into some One Hit Wonder discussion. One Hit Wonder is a kind of a big phenomenon in the music world. There's sort of a mystique around them. What happened? Was there, something that caused them to not have any more success, or was it a fluke? There's a lot of question marks surrounding it. And so I thought it would be fun to look at some one hit wonders from kind of our quote unquote golden era of the 90s. And there just seems to be a whole lot of one hit wonders, kind of started a big trend in the mid 80s or so, but certainly the 90s seems, and I may be biased, but seems to be sort of the golden age of one-hit wonders. Do you kind of agree with that?
I do, yeah. I think also there's just a lot of nostalgia that can easily get tethered onto a song like that. Usually when you have a one-hit wonder, it's happening, it's explosive, it's often connected to a film or a movement, like a sound that's taking off at the moment. And that can also expose you to something new. Once everybody's listening to something, or if something's just undeniably catchy, it can expose you to hip hop or R&B or funk or dance or whatever it is. Or it can just be a ridiculous dance that people on the Today Show are doing, whatever. I am interested to see, actually, as things can be kind of cyclical, and I think we'll touch on this later, with the way that people consume music now and how easy it is to just be exposed to a song on a streaming service, I think that we're probably going to see, it's too early to tell, but I think we're going to see a lot of this one-hit wonder phenomenon happen again as things kind of bubble up on TikTok. People kind of, some stuff starts trending and you just start seeing massive numbers on Spotify. And then people move on to the next thing and those artists get left behind.
Yeah, I agree with that assessment. It does remain to be seen, but a lot of these new artists that have these explosive hits, you sent me the article about the
diamond
records that have gone diamond, and it's like a lot of them are very new artists, and some of them are so new I haven't even heard of them. Yeah. So it will be interesting to see. This artist had a hit that went diamond. Will we ever hear from them again? You know what I mean? Right, it's really interesting. Right. So that'll be an interesting thing to watch for in the years to come. But before we dig into that on side B, Liam, what have you been buying and listening to recently?
So I think I'm experiencing a little of the phenomenon that we touched on last time, which is, and I feel like it's just going to become more and more impactful on how we kind of consume or purchase music as people who like to have a physical copy. I went to my local spot expecting to be able to pick up even a CD, let alone a vinyl copy of Tyler, the Creator's new album, Call Me If You Get Lost. Now, look, he announced it 3 weeks ago. It came out last week. Like, I would hope that, when Taylor Swift did that, you could then go to indie record stores. They made a note of going to indie record stores and you can buy signed copies of her album when that came out. But Tyler's album, you can't, or I couldn't find anywhere. Like, I went to two spots around me and I couldn't get it. Now, I don't know if that's just they didn't stock it or whatnot, but I asked at the desk and they were like, yeah, we haven't seen it. I also, though, would think that with the immediacy of making music, if an artist works on something for a few months and is ready to get it out and then is told that you need to wait 9 months for your vinyl records to get pressed, like, there's no reason anymore to wait to put that out. You could just put it out and then put out the vinyl next year or in a few months when it's ready. So I'm anticipating that I ultimately will be able to buy a copy of it. I'm hoping. But it, for now, I have to listen to it on streaming, and that just kind of reinforces that engagement with music then. So I have to go and listen to it on streaming. I can't play it in my car on a CD. I can't throw it on a turntable. But what it did do is, so I started listening to it a bit. And I there was one album of his, I don't know how familiar you are with him, but I think the Odd Future stuff, I mean, that started back in 2010, so I'm going to say it's retro enough to touch on for a second.
Oh, of course it is.
Because he's been putting out music for over 10 years now, and there's something about him. I mean, obviously early on, it was very provocative. It was really punk. Like, it was the punkest kind of hip hop that, he was a teenager that was hitting people with skateboards and saying things that just like would have your parents tearing their hair out. It melt your face. And then like I followed him through from until Wolf, and then I got away from it until he put out, I think it was called Flower Boy. And it was his production, like he does almost all of his own production. There's something so unique about it. And it's this blend of like a jazzy folk with some sampling. And then there was a lot of singing on the last two albums. I mean, Igor went on to be a massive success, like a critically acclaimed thing, nominated for a Grammy. It might have even won a Grammy. But like, I remember when that album came out, listening to it and really enjoying it, but he wasn't rapping on it. I remember talking to people and they were like, well, this isn't really a hip hop album anymore. This is alt hip hop, R&B, jazz. Like it was undefinable. Yeah. And so I skipped Cherry Bomb, which I think is his fourth album. And I hadn't been able to, I never saw a copy floating around. And so as I was looking through like all the stacks trying to find his new album, I saw a copy of Cherry Bomb and I grabbed that.
Nice.
And so I listened to that a bunch, and you can hear the transition there. Like I went back and listened to some of the earlier stuff again, and you could hear him experimenting at that point. And then the craziest thing happens. I then listened to the new Tyler album, and on like the fourth song or something like that, he cites it. He's just like, I went through puberty at 23. That's why Cherry Bomb sounds so sketchy. And I'm like, oh, I just literally experienced this as a fan of yours, and now you're addressing it in the verse of one of your new songs.
Man, that's crazy.
Yeah. So it's really good. Definitely worth checking it out. The new album's fantastic. I mentioned last time, Mountain Goats have a new album. Yeah. They're one of those bands that you can only be so lucky to be a fan of, because it's rare that a year goes by where you don't get new music by them, and it's been going on like that for almost 20 years.
Oh, nice.
You know, some of us have these bands that we like thirst for 4 years, 5 years, 8 years waiting for something to come out, and John Darnell just produces all the time. This one, actually, they put out an album last year, and they recorded that in Memphis, and then immediately after they finished, drove to Muscle Shoals in Alabama and just recorded this one too. So these are companion pieces. Yeah, these are companion pieces, one in Memphis, one in Muscle Shoals, and both of them are fantastic, but I think this one's better. Yeah, so this one's great. Again, I couldn't find this on vinyl. I'm assuming it's an order thing, although obviously this album's been done for over a year. You can order it off of the Merge website, so I just did that. I bought the CD just because I was in the store and I love this band, and then I ordered the vinyl on the label's website.
Yeah, that does seem to be more of a recent trend where the album will drop, but they're still taking pre-orders for the vinyl. And I don't know if it's a financial move or it is just due to the fact that a lot of the manufacturing is so far behind, but I'm definitely seeing that as more of a trend. Yeah.
And then, so I went digging around in a couple of spots. I did like some skimming while I was there just to see if anything caught my eye. Mm-hmm. And we've talked about Bruce Springsteen on here a few times. And something tells me this also will be the last time for this. But I remember hearing a handful of songs here and there from Tunnel of Love as I had skimmed his catalog, trying to find an entry point that struck with me, as we've talked about. And there was a copy sitting there for $5 and LP, and it was in good shape. And I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna go for it again. Like, I'll grab this and I'll just see what happens. And I gotta say, it's sticking with me a little bit.
Nice.
I think that part of it, and this is going to be sacrilegious to anybody who is actually a Springsteen fan, but this is his first album. This is his first album without the E Street Band. It's a Bruce Springsteen album. He doesn't technically have the band with him. There's synths and drum tracks, you know. And I think honestly, and I touched on this before, I think part of why I like this so much, other than my affinity for a production value like this, is that it's him writing, or it feels like him writing about his divorce. It feels like him writing about heartbreak. It's the blood on the page that I've talked about before, as opposed to him writing stories to kind of gain favor with his dad or to epitomize his father, watching the working class men and writing stories that are about them. Again, Nebraska's great, but it's like he read some newspaper articles and he wrote songs about them. And like, look, there's something very special about that. But when like things are crazy, like it's to listen to some of these songs is heart wrenching, and he can really write a song that'll cut you. And so now maybe I've got an entry point where I can like bond with the guy and then go have him take me back through these other fiction stories that he's written. I don't know. We'll see. We're going to see. And
I commend you for taking the plunge.
I mean, it's one of those things. There's a few artists like that where I'm just like, I gotta figure this out. There's gotta be something. Right? I did that with Fish, man. I've tried really hard. I've seen him live a bunch of times. Like, it's really cool, but I just can't figure it out. Like, never hits with me.
I think you have to be on drugs. I think that's
what
the
it
thing.
seems like. Yeah, it really. That's kind of
like,
where
I've
I'm
heard
at.
the story about the Grateful Dead where it's like, yeah, you can appreciate it, and it's like the music's pretty good, but it's like, why are people obsessed with it? Until you go to a Grateful Dead show, and apparently the acid does something to the music that makes it all make sense. But not that I have gone there, because I haven't, but that is what I have heard anyway.
Yeah. And then the last one, and this is partially because I like a little soft rock for the summer, you know? And so, again, skimming around, and I saw the 10cc section, and I'm familiar with some of their songs. You know, I don't have a ton of their stuff, but like I'm familiar enough, and they're just easy to listen to. And they do this thing where they kind of bounce around between that soft rock, yacht rock, and the psych rock stuff. And the album cover, so I picked up an album called Deceptive Bends. It's their fifth album. Apparently the band, I looked it up, the band had just kind of like started to split, and it's only two of the four guys who like carried on after the first four albums. But it's got, I mean, there's a song on it that I think everybody would know, which is The Things We Do for Love. Like, I think Amy Grant had a huge hit with it later on, but it was like super catchy and big back in the day as well. But yeah, it's good. It vacillates from this, like, it kicks in and it feels like it's going to be like a Floyd-esque kind of like psyche trippy record, obviously with a good pop sensibility to it. And then the next song, and maybe this has something to do with the recording process or what the band was going through, but the next song is just a departure for that, and it feels like you're listening to Ambrosia or whatever, you know? Oh, wow. But super listenable. And again, like, I love having that kind of music to just toss on in the summer if I'm just like, you know, hanging around the house or in the backyard, and I can like have the speaker set up so I can hear it and just listen to some Doobie Brothers, like some soft rocky Toto, whatever it is, you know? Absolutely.
Definitely. Yeah. All right.
What about
sounds
you?
Good little mix. Well, I've been listening to, I stumbled across the fact that Morcheeba, speaking of, you know, some 90s, you might even be able to consider them a one-hit wonder. But they were pretty big in the 90s when, you know, the whole down-tempo and trip-hop thing was starting to gain momentum. They just put out an album in May called Blackest Blue, and it is so good. Like, I went down the rabbit hole and started to dig up some of their older stuff that I listened to a little bit back in the day, and it's just like, this new album is phenomenal. It's really, really good. It's more like nighttime music or like rainy day, you know what I mean? Driving around when it's downpouring. It's fantastic for that.
But they're a band that's been putting out music this whole time too, stopped. Right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you can lose touch with them and then suddenly be reminded. And then all of a sudden you have this catalog to go back to.
Exactly.
Of like, it's like they put out 4 new albums for me. Yeah.
Exactly right. So I'm really enjoying it right now. Also digging back into a band that I was really, really into about 20 years ago called Cibo Matto. And they are, if you're unaware, a Japanese duo who came over to New York and started to get big. It's Miho Hattori and Yuka Honda. And Miho Hattori went on to be a member of the Gorillaz and was on that first album, and it kind of comes in and out in the later albums. And then Yuka Honda, collaborated and played in various groups and started playing with Nels Cline's band and became romantically involved. And now she is married to Nels Cline. So it's just kind of some interesting, an interesting web of musicians going on. But they put out a couple albums, actually 3, I believe, in the 90s. And then they came back together and put out an album in 2014. But the one that I have on vinyl is called Viva La Woman. And it is just an excellent record. They're really eclectic, lots of different genres. There's hip hop, there's jazz, there's rock, punk. Like no two of their songs sound the same. So it's always a fun listen, great for summertime.
Yeah.
The kids seem to like it. So
that's good.
Yeah, it's really fun.
Anything you can put on around the house is good. That's the thing.
Yeah. Definitely. It is fun, either I were driving around and, getting snow cones music or goofing off in the house. It's great fun. As far as purchases, I picked up, speaking of the Gorillaz, I picked up the Now Now, which was not their most recent album, but the one prior, which I feel like is a little bit underappreciated. It's really good. It's got a fantastic track with Snoop Dogg. And it's another one of theirs that Damon wrote the majority of it, if not all of it, while he was on the road touring the United States for the previous album. It wasn't quite the same as the album that he completely recorded on an iPad in the tour bus, but it's all written on the road. So there's songs, there's one called Kansas, there's one called Idaho. So he's kind of chronicling his journey throughout the country in a tour bus. But there's some bangers and there's also some really introspective stuff on there. So I really, really like that album. And I'm glad to finally picked it up.
I skipped this one, honestly. Like I missed it, and I need to go back to it because I've heard about it a couple times from people. And Damon is someone who he often hits for me, but I feel like I usually need to spend some time. I mean, there's obviously a few things that he's done where it's just like immediate. He wrote a catchy song, a banger, or something that's just gorgeous. But then there's a lot of stuff that grows on me with him. His solo album, Everyday Robots. Like I remember listening to Everyday Robots, and the first time I listened to it, I was like, what is this? This is weird. And I gave it another 2 or 3 listens, and I was like, oh no, this is awesome. This is really good. The Good, the Bad, and the Queen. Same. Like he does so much stuff, and I think we're gonna have new music from him soon. So that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, it feels like one of those albums where you need a few listens before it really gets inside of you, but then you can't let it go. Yeah, I listen to that a lot. Another album that I've had on my wish list for a while that I finally found is Painted Ruins by Grizzly Bear. Really amazing band, and I don't feel like they get the recognition that they deserve. They're just so multi-layered and make some really interesting music. And Painted Ruins is, I think, their best so far. They've done quite a bit, but this one I think is just like the culmination of all their previous albums. Most people probably know them from, you could probably consider them a one-hit wonder as well. But maybe, this newer album is just fantastic. It's really, really, really layered and just expertly crafted. I love it. And it sounds fantastic. Yeah.
This was actually my entry point for them when it came out, because it got some buzz, and the way, I forget how they described it, but they described it in a way that seemed really beautiful, and I was like, okay, I just need to get this album. And I honestly have never really given it a fair shake. Like I listened to it once or twice and I set it aside. I got distracted by something else, and it's one that I've always meant to go back to because I could feel it. It was very intricate. There was there's a lot going on with the orchestration. So I feel like I need to go back to this. I've never. You're giving me a hit list this week of things that I need to revisit.
Yeah,
which is great.
Crazy. Not only is it also one of those albums that you kind of have to listen to it a few times before it grabs you, but also it's one of those where you hear something new every time that you listen to it because it's so layered and multifaceted. Yeah. But I'm just so impressed with what they did with this album. And then, keeping it retro, last but not least, I stumbled across an insane deal on high quality pressing of Paul Simon's Graceland.
Nice.
I actually found it on deep discount for $8 when normally, it's like a $30 LP. It's not a cheap pressing. So I was happy to snag that, and it's in the mail, should be here this week. And I'm excited to listen to that because I don't think I've ever even heard that particular album on vinyl. I've got a couple of his, but I'm happy to have this one on the way.
You can call me Al's on that one, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Call me Al. Yeah, it's fantastic. Yeah, I mean, it's such a good album. I remember this is one that my parents would throw on from time to time because I think this also, I mean, obviously it has Graceland. I think this is Diamond and Silver Shoes too. It's on this one. Yeah. I mean, all three of those songs are just gorgeous. So nice pickup, nice price. Jeez. Fantastic.
Yeah, I got a shout out to the Vinyl Deals subreddit. So I find a lot of, I try not to order a whole lot from Amazon, but you'll sometimes find deals from Deep Discount or other places or directly from the label. So that was a good pickup. I was glad to catch that one before it sold out. All right. Good stuff. We did get a really interesting community question from Tim, aka Neo Prime. And his question to us is, what is your preferred way to listen to music? Headphones, earbuds, in the car, home speakers, etc. And then follow up, second part to the question, when you have to listen to your favorite tunes privately, what are your go-to headphones or earbuds?
You want to take this first?
I don't mind. Sure. So if I had, what I would call the perfect listening experience, it would be on my home hi-fi system with my turntable. I don't have a great turntable. I still basically have an entry-level turntable. It's an Audio-Technica LP60. However, I did earlier this year purchase a vintage Technics receiver, an SA500, which is, I don't know the exact year this model was manufactured, but it was somewhere either 78, 79, or 1980. And it just sounds phenomenal. It's really warm and punchy, and it gets really, really loud. I've tried a few different tower speakers through it, and they all sound great. But right now, I'm playing it through a couple of Infinity 363s, which are a little bit more of a more modern speaker. Vintage speakers that are actually really good and in good shape are pretty cost prohibitive. They can get really, really pricey. But the fact that these more modern speakers are so much more efficient, you can really crank them up and not risk blowing your amplifier. So if I would listen to it on my hi-fi setup on vinyl in a dark room in my listening chair from IKEA, and probably put on something like the Avalanches or Ghost Funk Orchestra. That's my answer to that, the first part. That's my preferred listening experience. But if I had to, I don't typically use headphones or earbuds, but when I need to, I do have a pair of AKG K553s. They're basically studio reference headphones. And, we got them for music production, but they sound phenomenal just straight out of my receiver. So if I have to use headphones, I'll try to do that. But of course, if I'm like mowing the lawn or doing something where I need, to be wireless, I do have an inexpensive pair of Bluetooth over-the-ear headphones. I do prefer over-the-ear. I don't like earbuds personally.
Yeah.
But they're just I think the brand is Let's Calm. They were like $25 on Amazon, but they have like a 100-hour battery life, which was important to me. Yeah. I've had them for 2 years, and I think I've charged them maybe 3 or 4 times. So, I don't use them very often, obviously, but in those situations where I'm either, at the grocery store or doing yard work or whatever, they're great for that because I don't care about the sound quality at that point.
Yeah. So for me, I think I've mentioned it on here before, but I'm definitely more of a utilitarian when it comes to music. I love listening to music in my car. It's part of the reason why I still like buying CDs. I'll connect my phone via Bluetooth to my car or plug in the aux or whatever sometimes, but A, you get that experience of listening to the full album, but B, I think it just sounds better. Like it's not compressed when it's coming from a CD in your car. Tim says here, his way is he likes to listen loud in his car, and I'm really the same way. I try not to be obnoxious about it, but man, do I roll the windows down and crank it and just kind of maybe sing along sometimes, Definitely. So that's definitely one for me. So my home setup right now is twofold. I've got a Sonos system, so I can kind of put different music on in different rooms. And it's actually coming in handy now. My daughter is continuing to experience music. I've got her kind of streaming a little bit now, so she can kind of pick and choose things. She's listening to the radio, which reminds me of when I used to listen to the radio, but I can kind of isolate that in one side of the house on my phone, and then we can listen to something else somewhere else. I've got a speaker somewhere else. My turntable is actually, it's a random super old one. I mean, I've got two. I've got a USB one that I would use to rip vinyl. Haven't done that a ton lately, but used to do that a bunch and still do from time to time when I find something unique. But then I've got this old Sanyo that I inherited from my grandfather. Oh, nice! And it's got like tape deck on it. It's an amplifier, the whole thing, and the speakers were kind of wrecked. I had a pair of these Panasonic speakers from another stereo system I had once before that I just kind of patched into this thing, and it works. It's small in a condensed situation, but that's mainly just for if I'm throwing records on upstairs. Again, I actually, the utility for me is the biggest thing. I'm like you, earbuds drive me crazy. They were pretty hyper convenient for commuting and working, but I actually, and I'm not, there's no liability here. I had some like medical kind of like I needed to see a doctor because of ear stuff. Wow. I think that like all the compression of these earbuds didn't really help the situation maybe.
Oh, I'm sure.
So I picked up these things not like 5 or 6 months ago. They're bone conduction headphones. Wow. I mean, the fidelity is not great, obviously, but like they just leave your ear completely exposed. If you're mowing the lawn, it kind of stinks. Like I still put in some kind of like earplugs, like shallow earplugs, to block out the noise. But yeah, I mean, it basically sits right under your temples, and it sounds just a little muddy. But if I'm listening to a podcast or if I'm, it's great for if I'm riding my bike. I shouldn't have headphones on when I'm riding my bike, but at least this leaves my ears open so that I can hear my surroundings while also listening to a podcast or something.
Man, that's really cool.
Yeah, it was weird. At first I read about it and I was like, is this going to damage something? And it said no, like earbuds are actually more likely to do the damage because they're just like funneling the sound right down your ear canal as opposed to the over ears, which at least leaves some space.
Yeah, it seems like stimulating it seems like a much safer route to go that's not going to damage your hearing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So,
yeah it's really weird. It's a weird sensation at first, and then you kind of get used to it. Like I can listen, like my kid can talk to me and I'm still listening to whatever in my head.
Man, I'll have to look into that. That's really kind of
bizarre.
Cool, actually.
Yeah. They're called aftershocks. Aftershocks. Yeah.
Cool stuff. Okay. A great question, Tim. Thank you so much. And definitely check out the Discord on RetroLogic for, the opportunity to submit your own community questions to us. And we're happy to talk about whatever it is you want to talk about. let's get into some music history that happened this week and some birthdays. Today is July 5th as we are recording this. And on this date in 1954, Elvis Presley's first commercial recording session took place in Memphis, Tennessee. He recorded That's All Right, Mama and Blue Moon of Kentucky, the very first recordings or professional commercial recordings that he ever made. This date,
Of the King.
1954. The King.
Yeah, man. The King.
It's not. I've got one of his records. It's not like something that I'll go and listen to a lot, but you can't deny, the impact that he had on not just music history, but pop culture in general.
Yeah, I don't know about your history with him at all, but my mom watched a lot of his movies. So I was obviously exposed to his music a bit, but I definitely remember growing up with his movies on the TV. And it was a weird thing to kind of just be used to somebody being a massive musical star and also a movie star at the same time. It's a little more common now, but it's still it's a weird phenomenon.
That's something interesting to research to see if he was like the first big, both crossover, movie star and hit record maker.
Yeah.
I can't think of anybody else that would have been before him, but that's something interesting that we should research and take a look at.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Yeah, it probably is. I mean, he's probably the biggest, at least to that point. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, the biggest for sure. And then this day in 1965 saw the formation of Jefferson Airplane, which of course later on went to evolve into just Jefferson Starship, and then
Starship. Yep.
Starship. Just Starship.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah. Again, great, like that, not soft rock, but that's kind of psych rock era of the 60s into the 70s. Just, that's some of the stuff that I was raised on. My dad loved that kind of stuff. And
fantastic stuff.
Yeah.
And then July 5th, 1994, Hootie and the Blowfish released Cracked Rear View, which has since gone platinum 21 times.
Insane, dude.
What
I mean, like this.
The heck?
This is not my band. I respect the band. Darius has gone on. He's got his own solo career in country. Megastars. And
great singer, undeniably.
Yeah, great singer. I remember there was an episode of Friends that was all about going to see Hootie and the Blowfish. I mean, they were in the cultural zeitgeist in the 90s, man. Like, they were a part of it. But it's another one. This is one that I don't feel like I need to go back to. Like, I feel like it can just be its own thing, and I just never got it. I'll stick with the Counting Crows, but Hootie and the Blowfish never did it for me. And I remember the band was celebrating one of the anniversaries. I guess it was probably 25th, so it was a couple of years ago. And that was a statistic that I heard, like when there was I think it must have been 2019 that they were going back out to celebrate the anniversary of this album that's gone platinum over 20 times. And it's like, what? How many people bought this album?
How many people are there?
Before streams. Yeah. Like, what?
They buy it multiple times. That's
crazy. Insane. I think it's something that probably did well overseas too. I'm sure it sold well overseas. It's just like Garth Brooks does really well in Europe for some reason. It's just like certain sounds resonate elsewhere as American music, and I think that this represented that.
Yeah, it definitely wasn't my thing either, but again, undeniable the songwriting and the vocal talents for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And then again on this date in 1997, I'm sure many of us that are around this age will remember the first Lilith Fair was launched in Charlotte, North Carolina. All of y'all probably know the artists Sarah McLachlan, Jewel, Tracy Chapman, Sheryl Crow, Emmylou Harris, Fiona Apple, Lisa Loeb. I mean, this was huge in the 90s. I mean, it was massive. And
there were also these other side stages where you had like Pat Benatar performing and stuff. Like there was there's everybody turned out for this. And in a time now where female songwriters are so prevalent and driving the industry, I would argue right now. Like the whole industry is under their spell and is controlled by them. Whether you're talking about Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion on the hip hop side, or Phoebe Bridgers over on the folk side, or Doja Cat or Dua Lipa, like women are just running this. And you have to think like this was not that long ago where Lilith Fair was a punchline almost, like Lilith Fair was a moment, but also then everybody was like, oh, Lilith Fair, like shave your armpits or whatever. Like it was like this weird kind of bristling that happened in the late 90s where all these women got together and they staked their flag and they're like, look at us. That like Fiona Apple and Sheryl Crow, it's an incredible lineup, man. Like it's incredible so lineup. Crazy. Yeah.
And I think what happened was that kind of the status quo got threatened, and there's always going to be a backlash when the status quo is threatened. And so, I was a huge Fiona Apple fan and still am. So when that first hit, I was like, oh, I want to go. Like, you know what I mean? There were artists that I wanted to go see, and I was like, I didn't care. But there were a lot of people that were like, kind of thumbing their nose at it and just kind of, like you said, treating it like a joke. But without that, we wouldn't probably have this fantastic surge of female artists that we have now.
Yeah.
So
I
props
think
to Sarah McLachlan, who I think was kind of the mastermind behind the whole thing.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, she was really annoyed, and I think it was her and Lisa Loeb and Paula Cole. They like kind of banded together and said, "Look, you look at a lot of what was female pop music at the time, and it was the Spice Girls, and like there's empowerment in that as well, but there needs to be a space, and there needed to be a space for all of that, and Lilith Fair was founded on the fact, and I still hear it to this day, which is crazy, by the way, like this isn't gone, where if you were booking a show, they wouldn't want to book multiple female acts. You'll hear this on radio still to this day, even on some TV programming, where it's like you need to make sure that there's not back-to-back female voices, because they felt like it didn't test right, or it wouldn't sell, or it wasn't marketable. And they were sick of it. And they were like, no, then we're going to do our own thing. And you'll have 50 women on the bill, and I'll show you what we can do. Right. If you won't book 2 women together in a row, we'll book 50 of them, and then we'll prove you wrong. And they did it, man. They killed it. Yeah.
And thankfully that seems to have changed as far as, it's definitely not unusual to have multiple headlining women. I mean, look at any of the festival lineups this year, and it's women all over the place, and I'm here for it. I think it's great.
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. Well, moving on, July 6th, 1957, another extremely important day in music history. This is the day that John Lennon and Paul McCartney met for the first time at the Woolton Church Parish Fete, where the Quarrymen were appearing. If you don't know, the Quarrymen was a band founded by John Lennon well before the Beatles, and eventually, Paul impressed John with his guitar skills. And I was reading a story where John and the other guitar player in the Quarrymen were so impressed with Paul's ability to tune guitar. They were paying other people to tune their guitars at that point because they didn't know how to tune them properly. Wow. And so that was one of the ways that Paul impressed them, was the fact that he could tune their guitars. You know what I mean? So good on you, Paul, for knowing how to tune a guitar properly, because without that skill, we might not have the Beatles as we know them today.
Yeah. It's also amazing that we can pinpoint this. We're saying like 50 plus years ago on this date, the initial spark that would then cause the Beatles to become was started. Like it's cool that we have this kind of archive to know that when this exactly happened.
Absolutely. And the only thing we don't have is not that I know of anyway, is like video evidence of this happening. People didn't have, handheld recording devices at that time in history. But speaking of Paul McCartney, July 9th, 1972, Paul McCartney and Wings played their very first show in the small French town of Châteauvillain. And obviously, this was, believe 6 years post Beatles breakup, or at least 6 years since the last time the Beatles had performed. So, 6 years is Paul and Linda McCartney and Wings. And they just toured around all over the place, put out a number of great albums and great, just, kind of, I hate to call it a postscript to the Beatles, but, Paul being my favorite Beatle, I have to give it up for Paul McCartney and Wings, because for me, they were an extension of the Beatles.
Yeah, anything is going to be a postscript when you have the Beatles. Anything is going to feel a little bit like that. But I think each of them went on, some more than others, but each of them went on to have their second and even third act. I mean, Paul has done so much since. He's
still doing stuff.
Still, yeah.
That most recent album of his, and then the follow up where a bunch of other artists came in and did remixes of the songs. I mean, it's amazing what he's doing even to this day. And so hopefully we still have him for a number of years, but it's just insane to see such a creative spirit endure for so long. And God bless Paul McCartney. So we'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I mean, I remember hearing him performing at a music festival, and I wasn't familiar with his new music at all. And he was singing a song called "Fuh You." I don't know if it was from a couple years ago, and I remember just sitting there. I was like, "Is that Paul McCartney swearing in song from a stage? Like, what is happening here?" But at a similar thing, he was singing "Paperback Writer," and I'm watching 16-year-olds sing along to it, and I'm like,
"Of course,
this is wild." But is it, of course, like 16? Like, that's
because they grew up, man. Their parents had it playing, and they grew up with it. And when you grow up with the Beatles, it sticks with you,
right? But but that means that their parents heard it from their parents at that point. That now you're 3 generations down,
probably,
unless they're finding it on Spotify or something. Like, they're 3 generations down from who originally heard this song and has passed it to their kids, who passed it to their kids.
Probably at this point, yes.
That's crazy. Yeah.
It's amazing. Yeah. No, you're right. 100%. Okay. So we'll hit a few birthdays, and then we'll wrap up side A here, and we'll flip it over to side B and invite Dan on to share about his top one-hit wonders of the 90s, and we'll all share our thoughts on that. July 5th, 1950. Huey Lewis.
Yeah.
Everyone knows, his number one single, Power of Love. It was in Back to the Future. Massive hit. Happy birthday, Huey Lewis.
Were you a Huey fan, or are you a Huey fan, or were you ever a Huey Lewis fan at all?
I'm a casual Huey fan.
Yeah. I definitely remember hearing him back in the day, hearing "I Want a New Drug" and not getting it and being like, "This is dumb." And and then it's probably like 8 to 10 years ago at this point, I just I think he put out a blues album, and I'm like, why is Huey Lewis putting out a blues album? And then when you go back and listen to his music, you're like, oh, because he plays blues music. Yeah. He plays like soul and blues. Of course he loves this. And it's just kind of
heavily drenched in the 80s.
The 80s, which I still will love. And so I went back. I did, I don't know, we could touch on this on a different podcast at some point about greatest hits albums that we own, because there's a whole thought process about which albums you'll buy a greatest hits of and which you won't. I bought a greatest hits because I'm like, I want to immerse myself in this and I want to hear the jams, and just fell in love with the guy's catalog. I've become a fan. You know, he's been putting out music for 40 years now or whatever. And like, it took me until, 2015 or 2014 to discover the guy and be like, oh, okay, no, this is my dude. I like this guy.
Well, you're gonna elevate him from meme status in my mind, so that's good.
Yeah.
Anytime you can do that, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
Also, July 6th, 1925, Bill Haley of Bill Haley and His Comets, commonly known as the first rock and roll star, had their number one hit, Rock Around the Clock, in 1955. Hard to imagine it being that long ago. Also credited as bringing rock and roll music to white America and, the rest of the world at that point. But, he took what he saw others doing and kind of put his twist on it. And, obviously we want to be fair to all the rock and roll artists that came before him, but he is a historical figure in music and definitely deserves at least a mention on his birthday. Also on the same day, but in 50 years later, 1975, Curtis Jackson, otherwise known as
50 Cent.
50 Cent.
G-Unit.
U.S. rapper, had a number one hit single in 2003, In the Club. And nobody doesn't know that song. That was a big hit.
Yeah, I liked that album. I admittedly, there's not a whole lot of that like 2000s bling rap that ever kind of resonated with me. There's a hunger on some of the songs on that I don't think he ever replicated again. And obviously he's gone on to become this mogul where he got paid a bunch of money for buying vitamin water, and then Coca-Cola bought it from all that stuff, and like movie star, TV star. But that first album I went back to maybe a year or two ago, not super recently, but I think it still holds up. Like for what it is, for that kind of like gangster rap kind of its time. There's a couple songs on there in between the In the Club and PIMP and whatever that actually still, they're really good. Like there's some great stuff on there. I mean, Eminem was involved in it a bunch, like executive producing, Dr. Dre. You can't go wrong with that.
Well, yeah, he definitely deserved the attention that he got from Eminem. I mean, at that point in time, you know what I mean? He was discovered. He deserved to be discovered.
Oh yeah.
And then,
for sure.
All right, a few more birthdays. July 9th, 1947, Mitch Mitchell, drummer for the Jimi Hendrix Experience. July 9th, 1964, American singer-songwriter Courtney Love, lover or hater. Happy birthday, Courtney Love. And then last but not least, July 9th, 1975, Jack White, guitar, vocalist, The White Stripes.
The Raconteurs.
Solo, Raconteurs, Dead Weather. I have to say, my favorite Jack White vehicle is the Dead Weather. I know I'm probably 1 out of 100 that would actually say that, but I like the White Stripes. I like a lot of his solo stuff, but the Dead Weather does it for me.
Yeah, I hear that. I actually go back and forth between Dead Weather and Raconteurs. White Stripes are what they are. I think that they obviously wrote, like, there were some fantastic, undeniable songs from that era. But when you look at being kind of dynamic and kind of fleshing out what he's able to do, I've seen him perform with the Raconteurs, and the chemistry is on point there. And I think the songs, like what he's done with the Dead Weather, is stellar. I mean, Alison Moss Hart is such a badass.
Amazing. Love that group. Awesome. Well, happy birthday, Jack White. And I think we're about wrapping up side A here. You want to flip it over and let's get into some one-hit wonders.
Let's do it.
Cool. Welcome back to Side B of Retro Groove, and we are, as promised, here with the one and only Dan.
I'm here.
Caparello, the pilot, the chief cook and bottle washer of the Retrologic Network, the man that started it all.
The CEO.
The CEO, president, and head honcho.
Is that a real term with the bottle washing? Wow.
Well, that's an old-timey saying.
Yeah. Well, I'm not an old-timey guy. You know, in a way though, I am.
In a way.
So
tell us how you're doing, Dan.
I'm doing pretty good. It's a bit sweaty here in the old garage tonight, but it's been a tiring weekend. You know, you had 4th of July and all the jerks in my neighborhood love to launch their illegal fireworks. And I have 3 kids under 6, so there was not a lot of sleeping going on.
Mm-hmm.
But
how'd the dog do?
Here we are. Dog wasn't too bad. I slept on the couch with the dog so that the dog wouldn't freak out.
Yeah.
And then my wife had earplugs. So we did okay, but it just, it's just never fun.
Right.
Never fun.
It was fun coming over and having all the fam get together, though. So that was
Yay.
cool. Thank you for having us over.
You are so welcome. Come back.
All right. We are diving into our spotlight this week. One hit wonders of the 90s. Now, of course, I'm a little bit biased. I'm sure we all are a little bit biased that the 90s were a very special time for a great many things, music, politics, what have you. But the 80s and 90s in particular was a very special time for one-hit wonders.
Yeah.
And Liam, I know you had some kind of theories about this, and I don't know if you want to dig into that a little bit, but
yeah,
it seems like it got more frequent as we got into the kind of mid 80s, well into the 90s.
Yeah, I mean, MTV obviously fed into that a lot. It took a lot to get on the radio before that. But once you had the system, the marketing machine of MTV, you had them, these record labels just churning things out left and right. Not to say that before that it didn't exist. Like you go back to the 50s and 60s, I don't know if you can name another song by the Five Satins or whoever, like there's tons of songs that we all love from these one-off things. So one-hit wonders have been around for decades. But there's something about how the industry kind of churned things out in the mid to late 80s, how people started to consume music differently, that I think drove into the early 2000s. And I looked it up. I mean, obviously it's a little early, but I looked up the past decade to see what are the kind of formulative one-hit wonders that we're looking at now, and there's just not as many that I see. Again, giving everybody an opportunity. It's still the century is still young. But you think of like Gangnam Style by Psy. There's a few things out there that could, Gautier's song is just like, it's going to be that song and that's going to be it.
Yeah.
But yeah, the 90s into the 2000s, I think were a really, really special time for this one hit wonder kind of culture.
Yeah, and I also have to wonder if it has something to do with the way that the actual physical media was shifting and changing. We went from having vinyl records and cassette tapes, which for the most part, it was kind of a linear listening experience. It was kind of a hassle to select a specific song, particularly with cassette tapes. But as we got into the mid 80s to late 80s to early 90s, you started to see more digital formats with the compact disc becoming, prolific, where you could skip around easily. You could skip, we can do song 4 and then we can do song 6, or you could set your own playlist and play the songs in any order that you want and easily swap out and play, you had multi-disc changers where you could just go crazy random mode. And so it started to become a little bit more on demand. And I think that might have actually fed into, we are impatient now and we want the next thing right now. Like we don't want to wait for it. And I think that might feed in. So what we've done is each of us have selected our general top 5 one-hit wonders of the 90s.
In no particular order.
No particular order, just a handful each, yeah.
You know, we each went back into the memory banks and thought about what were the biggest hits that affected us the most, or the ones that stuck with us through the last, 20, 25 years. So, Dan, you are our guest. I'm going to put you on the spot first and have you go over your top 5. And then, if you want, you can extrapolate and expand on whatever you want to talk about there.
Sweet. I get to do all 5. Good.
Yeah.
I also had a kind of an idea or like a thought about what the whole like one hit wonder culture of the 90s was like.
Please.
Because pretty much every one of these artists on my list, and I think most one hit wonders overall, and not all of them, some of them kind of had their hit and disappeared, but almost all of them had this life beyond their hit.
Yes.
That was like so good. Like the hit isn't even their best song, but that just happened to be what was in the zeitgeist at the time.
Yeah.
And why the rest of their libraries kind of went not unnoticed, but by the general population was thrown under. And a lot of that has to do with, how radio is run and how hits are made.
Right.
In which Liam, you probably have way more insight to that than I do. But you guys last episode started talking about Fastball quite a bit, and that got me all excited because they're still one of my favorite bands of all time.
And they're still around. They're still kicking.
They're still kicking. They had an album a couple years ago, which was pretty good. It still can't quite match up to their earlier stuff. But so their big hit obviously was The Way, and that was on your playlist last episode. And that kind of like started this whole rabbit hole that I went down of like re-listening to all their discography and rediscovering stuff that I loved from them. But The Way was kind of an insane thing for them because their first album was very punk inspired and very like hard and like edgy, and everything on All the Pain Money Can Buy, I think that was All the Pain Money Can Buy, everything on that album was very not soft, but just not hard.
It's a pop album. Yeah,
it was a super pop rock album, kind of 70s rock inspired, but still very poppy. And let's see, I had some stats pulled up.
I mean, we talked about out of my head, like they are another band that were really a one album wonder. Like they had 2 legit hits off of that album, which is a thing that happened in the 90s. I think Out of My Head is the song that we talked about last episode because it was sampled. But The Way, I remember my mom hearing that song and just being like, she wanted to turn the radio up. Like she loved that song, and she likes like Simply Red and the Police. Like she does not listen to contemporary music at all. But yeah, she
was universally enjoyable.
It was just a great pop song.
Yeah, I mean, and it was high on everybody's charts. It was number 1 in Canada for a while, which is kind of insane. It was number 1 in the US on 3 different lists, and then it stayed up in the top 40 for a number of weeks. It just stick around,
Yeah.
And then they had their second album, which was pretty good, and it had that other song of theirs, which was "You're an Ocean, You're an Ocean," which was
semi-hit.
Yeah, I mean, and people know that song, but they might not even know that it's Fastball or know where they know it from. It was just one of those songs that was around, and then they just totally dropped off. And everybody kind of missed their 4th and, in my opinion, best album. So,
Does that Keep Your Wig On or Keep Your Wig?
Yeah.
That one was so
which
good.
Was, as we discovered today, co-produced by Adam Schlesinger, who we'll get into later.
That's so
in
not
great detail,
that's
probably.
Not surprising, but yeah, that totally makes sense. Wow.
And you listen to that
The
album.
Spiderweb is.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
You listen to that album and you totally hear it. Like
Yeah.
you hear.
Now it
Fountains
makes
of
so much
Wayne in
sense.
that album.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's Fastball. I'm so glad I got to talk about them a little bit. Next on my list, we have Not a Surf with
Yes.
yeah, like seriously, probably number one favorite band of all time, Not a Surf. Like if I listen to anything and I don't know what to listen to, it's Not a Surf. With their song Popular, it's just like not at all their wheelhouse.
No.
They have so many albums that are way more in line with later on they did Let Go, and everything after that is Let Go, right? It's soft indie alternative, and you know, Popular was like this harsh, and actually that whole album it was High Low, their first album, was just very hard, you know. Another, just like Fastball, started off really hard and then kind of found their place. And I actually I have this crazy story. I met Matthew Cause, who's the lead singer of Not a Surf, at South by Southwest show that I was running as an audio tech when I was working for Freeman AV, who rented out the equipment. And he was on this panel where it was life after One Hit Wonders.
Wow.
And so it was Matthew Cause and then a bunch of people I'd never heard of in my life. I was racking my brain trying to remember who else was on that panel. I was like, I just don't. And I'm sure there were plenty of people who didn't have any idea who Matthew Cause was, or even who Not a Surf was. Really, depending on what generation you're from. But yeah, they totally changed after that, which, you know, Let Go, arguably their greatest album, just what, you know, just a totally different animal. But yeah, I always like to go back and listen to High Low, but it is very different than what I like Not a Surf to be.
Yeah, and it's a great example. There's a bunch here on our lists of, like you said, bands who went on to have this incredible career and found their fan base and stuck with it, and have, I think Not a Surf's got like 10 albums or something like that. It's got to be at this point. Like they've made a career out of it. Yeah. They can still go out on the road and pull a crowd and have this like ecosystem that supports them.
They're huge in Europe too.
Yeah, and I think Rick Ocasek did that first album. Like that was another one of those things that he did around the time that he did the first Weezer album. Like there was a handful of those alt bands that he worked with like through the mid 90s. So again, not super surprising that there's a hit on there when you're dealing with that guy in the mix.
That makes a lot of sense now that I think about like the guitar tone. When I think about Popular and how the guitar sounds in that song, that's totally Rick Ocasek.
Yeah.
Like it's very similar to that first Weezer album.
Yep.
Like just turn the treble and the presence all the way down and just get this meaty guitar sound. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
One of my favorite things about Not a Surf is their bassist, who just does his own thing. I saw them live a few years ago, and he does not belong in that band. He's like this tatted up, bald, like rocker dude, and he's just like super into like, you know, they're playing like Blizzard of 77, and he's doing his own little like big bass riffs, and he's insane. But that's Not a Surf. They just
works.
They don't belong anywhere.
He looks like he should be in a new metal band.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Love it. My next song on this list is Fountains of Wayne, Stacy's Mom, it's Stacy's mom.
Yeah.
I thought,
everyone knows it.
That the thing about me is that and Adam too, we were listening to Fountains of Wayne back when they first started.
Right.
And
Yeah,
I thought
before Stacy's Mom.
I thought that Hat and Feet was their one hit wonder. I don't know if you know that song. I'm just a hat and feet. It was on Radiation Vibe, or is that the name of the album, or is that just?
Well, no, that's. Track? I was just gonna say, Radiation Vibe is the first song on the album, and I would have thought that was their one hit. But
I mean,
then
that's a killer song. I think I heard Hat
Yeah.
and Feet first, which makes me think that. But anyway,
Oh,
Stacey's
wow.
mom got it going on. And technically this is 2003, so it's not really a 90s hit, but they've been around.
they're a 90s
before
band.
this. Yeah, they were around before this for a while before they had their actual like break in. Which is kind of bonkers considering Adam Schlesinger is like crazy prolific throughout the music industry and movie industry. And
my goodness.
his band just kind of had that song. And I remember reading an interview one time with them, and they talked about how they literally had a conversation before they dropped this album where they were like, okay, like if we put Stacey's Mom on this album, this is going to be our hit and this is what we're going to be known for. And is this what we want? I remember reading that in an interview, and it's so interesting how they knew before the song even came out. They were like, no, this is going to be what everybody listens to.
I've got one in the chamber. Should I take the shot? Like I
Right.
could, or
Exactly.
I could sell it for a bunch of money to some pop star, or I could do it myself. Yeah.
You know,
Exactly.
And they did it, and now,
They did
and
it.
he was absolutely right. That's when you say the words "Fountains of Wayne." Oh, Stacey's mom, and it makes me
Yeah.
so mad. But it just is what it is, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the dude has won 3 Emmy Awards?
Insane.
Yeah. Something like that.
A Grammy, and nominated for a Tony and a Golden Globe. Like, what other one-hit wonder has those accolades? I mean, that's insane.
Wrote all the music for That Thing You Do. Wrote all the music for Lyrics and Music. Worked with Gwen Stefani.
So many.
Worked with like huge
The
artists.
Monkees. He wrote
Yeah.
music for the Monkees. Like, oh my God.
Adam.
So
Yeah, miss that dude.
insane.
Okay, so we've got Jamiroquai up next, which
Oh my God, this song.
like I guess
Talk about it.
So okay, so Virtual Insanity, which everybody knows this song, Virtual Insanity. It was a crazy, insane smash hit everywhere. Like
yeah.
just like dominated the charts for so long, and had the
that
coolest,
music video.
It had the coolest music video anybody had ever seen. And we were all staring at the screen trying to figure out how he was floating, like walking on, just like
It's just a
moonwalking all
moving
over the
floor.
room.
It's just a moving floor, but the way
Camera
that
is
they did
attached
it,
to the walls.
yeah, so cool, so freaking cool.
And Jamiroquai, Adam, I think you got me into Jamiroquai, and then I like. It was one of those things where like you were like, "Oh, hey Dan, you might like this like fusion funk band," and then
I don't even remember, to be honest.
I kid you, I bought every single Jamiroquai thing that I could find. And
That's
to
amazing.
this day, I still can't not listen to whatever new thing they're doing. It's just that I have to.
Yeah.
And I still really, really want to see them live. And for a long time, they were not touring in the US.
Yeah.
And I think they're planning on coming back soon. And I thought I read that somewhere, but I don't have the info in front of me. But just... I don't know what else to say about this song.
Yeah. The
Dan was
good.
Go ahead.
I was going to say the tough thing with them is like they did have Canned Heat, which with the Napoleon Dynamite
Right, on the
soundtrack
Napoleon Dynamite.
was huge, but I don't think that got pinned to them enough. Like people
No.
know that song from the movie. They know the syncs. If you played it for them, they were like, oh yeah, I heard that in a movie. I heard that in a TV show. I've heard that somewhere before on a YouTube video, but I don't think that has Jamiroquai attached to it. Virtual
And-
Insanity was like, here's this song by this guy wearing a huge top hat and like, what is even going on right now?
And they literally are the same
Exactly.
today as they were back then. He still wears the top hat.
Yeah.
other
Well, he's got like these
song-
crystal
Right.
things off. Yeah, it's got some headpiece. Yeah.
The only other thing I could think of that they did was big was when they did "Feels Just Like It Should," and I can't remember. I think that's just the name of the song. That was in a PlayStation commercial, and it's
Yeah.
the song's catchy as hell,
Yeah.
and so like it got a little bit of traction because of that. People would hear the song and be like, "Oh, this is a cool song," but it didn't go nearly as far as Virtual Insanity did.
Well, kind of like how we touched on quite a bit in the last episode, talking about, Tony Hawk soundtracks and game soundtracks in general. A lot of these songs that end up in video games or a commercial or what have you, they end up becoming kind of off chart hits, for lack of a better term. You know what I mean? It's like everyone knows these songs, even if they didn't actually chart, because they were so prolific and all over the place in another medium.
Well, and just like the Tony Hawk situation, that song had been out for 2 years by the time PlayStation grabbed it. So, you know, like it's not going to be on the charts. So Jamiroquai, they can be a tough pill to swallow because they're very weird, but they're also just if you're a musician, you can't help but appreciate what they're doing.
Yeah, they're a good band to just put on, you know, like they're one where you're just like, I'm just going to choose a record. It doesn't matter. And just throw it on.
So this next band is is fighting for the top spot of my favorite bands of all time. And that is Grandaddy.
Yes.
And Grandaddy had the song Crystal Lake, which even though it was like number 28 top hit in the UK, and it got its rounds in the United States, I wouldn't be surprised if nobody had ever heard of it before. It wasn't that big, but we're taking the term one hit wonder loosely here so that I have an excuse to talk about Grandaddy. Grandaddy feels like,
as far as I know, they only had one charting hit, at least like in the top 25.
Yeah.
Now,
so I think you're good.
When 28 Days Later came out, they had a song on that soundtrack. They had AM 180, which was on their first album, which was at that time 10 years old. So it's not like that's going to chart, but it did get a bit of a boost. And when I saw them live, they played it because they knew, okay, people know this song at Skate Fest. We might as well play it.
Yeah.
But Grandaddy is very personal to me because they're a band that feels like nobody in the entire world knows who the hell this band is except for me. And I feel like everything they do is so genius. And anytime they collaborate at all, whenever Jason Lytle does something outside of Grandaddy, it all sounds like Grandaddy. So I'm just obsessed with this dude and his music writing style and his synthesizer working and his lyrics, but it doesn't feel like nobody knows who they are. So it's like this was put on earth for me, is what it feels like.
They're on the indie radar a little bit, but outside of that, most folks, unless they're tuned into a local public access radio station like KUTX or KEXP or those types of stations, you're probably completely unaware of who they are.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think they're not pop, but he certainly writes like he's a pop songwriter. And then he makes his music all weird. So it's like unpalatable to the normal ear.
Yeah, I know that he was planning, because it had its 20th anniversary last year, and I know that he had, before COVID, had been planning this whole thing, and I think they ultimately went forward with it, but shifted. They were doing a reissue, and I think it came out, or if it's not, it's for pre-order, but he did a version, or was doing like a scaled down version of the entire album, like re-recording the whole thing by himself.
On a piano.
Something like that, yeah.
I have it, actually.
Did you? Is it out?
Yes, it came out. Honestly, it was probably a couple months ago, something like that. It came via Rough Trade, I believe. Unfortunately, the pressing itself sounds pretty bad.
Oh man!
And it seems like more of a manufacturing problem. But the music and the work itself is fantastic. That's honestly one of the few albums that I would recommend to just get digitally.
The album is literally called The Software Slump on a Wooden Piano.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
It's really good. It's
That's
honestly
amazing.
It's very, very good, and it's a little bit of a tearjerker as well. Like some of the songs that might be a little bit more fun and upbeat take on new life when he's literally just him and a piano. So yeah, I wish the vinyl pressing was better. There's just a lot of noise and distortion, so it makes it difficult to listen to in that format. But the album itself is fantastic.
Cool. Yeah. I got to go back and I got to check that out. I missed it.
So that's Granddaddy. That's my heartfelt. So bonus round.
Bonus.
I have to mention Dynamite Hack, Boys in the Hood. Because you can't talk about 90s one hit wonders without talking about the like chill down Jack Johnson style cover of Boys in the Hood by Dynamite Hack.
Yeah.
Well, they also have a little bit of a unique one hit wonder status along with like Soft Cell and Tiffany, where their one hit wonder is a cover song.
Mm-hmm. Alien Ant Farm.
But now I know all
Alien
the words
Ant Farm
to Boys
as
in
well,
the Hood.
yeah.
I now know all the words to Boys in the Hood.
Now we know all the words to Boys in the Hood.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Dynamite Hack.
Yeah. To go along with me knowing all the words to Getting Jiggy with it. You know?
Yeah.
So you and I can, we can trade bars.
Perfect.
That's awesome.
Me, guys. That's my
Sweet.
list.
Good list.
Adam, you want to take a couple here? What do you want to do?
Well, sure. And if only because there is another connection between some of these artists here that, again, I just discovered today, doing a little bit of homework for the songs and artists that we were going to be talking about. My first artist and almost certainly my favorite artist in my top 5, so this would be my number 1, is Superdrag. Their smash hit was Sucked Out off of their first album, and they actually, or John Davis, the principal singer-songwriter, co-wrote a song with Adam Schlesinger of Fountains of Wayne. And it's one of the best Superdrag songs. It's just an incredible, super catchy song. And it's not on any of their studio albums. It's on a split EP that they did with a band called The Anniversary, which is a great band in their own right.
Oh my God.
But it was this split EP. It only ever came out on CD. It's not on any streaming. Dan's holding it up right now.
Because it's not on streaming, so I had to go buy the CD for $10 somewhere.
It doesn't seem to be streaming anywhere. It's got 3 songs by each band, and they're fantastic songs.
Every song is killer.
That is so crazy. I remember seeing that CD for sale at an anniversary show. I love The Anniversary. I went to the I think it's Your Majesty or His Majesty is the name of that second album, and I went to that show and I remember seeing and not buying that split because I didn't know Superdrag at all. But when you just held it up, I'm like, I saw the A and I was like, oh my gosh, that was on the merch table. Like I remember seeing that. Yeah.
Do you remember the lineup of that show?
I don't know. It might have been Superdrag. Like it's possible that they opened up for the anniversary or vice versa.
I saw the anniversary with the Get Up Kids.
Hot Rod
this
Circuit.
Band called it was the anniversary, Get Up Kids, Kofax, and a band I believe was called either Jebediah or Jedediah.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd never heard of
the bad band
either band except for the Get Up Kids and the Anniversary.
Kofax was good. Yeah.
And I just remember I knew of Anniversary. I'd kind of liked them. But after that show, I was a bigger fan of the Anniversary than Get Up Kids. It was like mind blowing what they were doing.
Yeah.
So I don't know how they got to, maybe they were just on the same label and they had a few songs and,
John Davis doing a lot of collaboration.
Decided to, he does a lot of that stuff. So that could have had something to do with it. But, that's a really, really good split EP. But most people know Superdrag because of their huge hit, Sucked Out. They had this very kind of 1960s power pop thing going on. Even in the video, he's got the mod haircut going on. And it was almost like a faux British invasion kind of thing that they were doing. And I think that's what Elektra, the label that they were on at the time, was after. Because that seemed to be the big push. A lot of the artwork and the videos and stuff like that at the time. Even their second video, for would have been Destination Ursa Major, had that same kind of 60s mod, almost Austin Powers vibe to it. And I think Elektra was pushing that quite a bit. And then their second album, they had all this money from the label to create a record. And the story goes that Superdrag was not happy, particularly John, was not happy with what the label was pushing them to do. So they were basically like, hey, we've got all this money from the label. We're just going to make the best studio album we possibly can with this money and screw trying to have a hit.
Make a hit. Yeah.
Or be popular or anything. And it's arguably their best record. I mean, it's expansive. It's beautifully recorded. It sounds amazing. Somehow sounds better even than the albums that came after that. But, they're still making music to this day, not under Superdrag anymore. 2/3 of Superdrag is now playing under the name The Lees of Memory.
So was that album, and was that Valley of Dying Stars?
No, the album I'm talking about where they completely like took a left field with Elektra's money was Head Trip in Every Key.
Oh, Head Trip.
Yeah, and they actually had a 3-album deal with Elektra, and after Head Trip, Elektra hated it so much that they basically gave in to their request to be dropped from the label.
Amazing.
And then Valley is on Arena Rock Records. So they got out of their contract with Elektra by request. And so I think that was part of it. They were like, hey, let's purposefully not have a smash hit. So that's probably, at least if we're focusing on the 90s, my favorite one-hit wonder band, because they've had a successful career, outside of that. Even outside of Superdrag, just John Davis's solo stuff, Lees of Memory, and all the side projects and collaborations that he does. The next band that I want to talk about is another semi-loose fit, because it kind of depends on what charts you're looking at. There's no hard and fast rule for what constitutes a quote-unquote hit.
Sure.
But I want to talk about Portishead really quick. They were really instrumental in my upbringing and maturity as a musician and as a music fan. They had a hit and a music video that was quite popular for the song called Sour Times, Nobody Loves Me. And they actually used footage from their weird little like Mission Impossible, James Bond knockoff spy film, because that was kind of their vibe early on.
Yeah.
No one really knew how to describe trip hop or what it should look like or sound like, and they were very, very early on in that genre or subgenre, and they went on to have an amazing career, a fantastic second album, a completely underrated third album that I love very much, but went completely, unnoticed by most people. An amazing live album, PNYC at Roseland. And as far as I know, is still, making music to this day. But that is their big hit. And they kind of launched the whole career off of that. They had a kind of a minor hit with Glory Box, and that's another one that was sampled by another artist and kind of repurposed for a pop song. So that kind of took on another life in a different genre. But I love Portishead, and I will listen to them, to this very day.
Yeah, they're one of those where I am curious as to why they just kind of disappeared. I'm sure there's a story there or a reasoning. You see them pop up at music festivals and shows, but they never do, to my knowledge, they never do like proper tours or anything like that. I wonder like if they had solo projects. They seem like the kind of band where everybody had their own thing and could probably go off and do a bunch of production. I'd be shocked if we didn't find that digging into it a little bit. But
yeah, I mean they do festivals and stuff like that. But I'm peeking at their Wikipedia right here. They in 2012 they jokingly pointed out that it could be another decade before a new album is released. I do know that with their album Third, which came out in 2008, they had kind of tried to be a little bit subversive and make something unexpected because they sort of started to feel this expectation for what their music was supposed to sound like. And so they really bucked against that. So I think that probably has a lot to do with it.
I respect it.
I want to talk about the Breeders. Can we talk about the Breeders?
Let's talk about the Breeders.
They are one of my favorite bands of all time. Obviously, Kim Deal coming off of the bass player and also vocalist for the Pixies.
Yeah.
Their first album is amazing. Didn't do a whole lot. Got a little bit of attention because they have a Beatles cover on the album and Happiness is a Warm Gun. But when Cannonball hit the radio, this is another one where this song doesn't sound like any of their other songs.
Is this the boo doo 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 doo?
Yep.
Boo doo 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 doo. Okay.
Yep. That one.
Got it.
Sometimes Dan's a bass player, so you'll have to forgive him.
That's amazing. Wait, I need the lick. What's the lick? Okay, got it. Yeah.
You play Dan the bass line, and he's got it.
Oh,
he's
yeah.
locked
Amazing.
in.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, which is probably why he loves Jamiroquai so much as well. He just
got it.
Dan was locked in to the funk at a very, very early age, and I'm envious of his
funkiness.
his funk instincts, his funkiness for sure.
Funk is the problem. Funk is the solution.
Funk is the solution. So obviously the Breeders have had a long career. They've had a number of albums, but Cannonball was really their only big hit. It was the music video was directed by Kim Gordon of Sonic Youth and Spike Jonze. So, that was huge. I remember my high school band playing that song at like a school dance. Like it was huge.
Man, you guys had cool dances. You guys played at all your stuff. I love these stories. I never did. I had one battle of the bands that I made up for ourselves at our school, and that was it.
That counts.
I got it, kind of.
It all counts. So, but I'm a huge fan, and that song in particular, whenever I put it on in the car today because I wanted to, listen to all of my top five, so they were fresh in my memory. And man, that song rips. Like you just play it loud, and it's not really. It doesn't sound like anything. It's completely its own beast, and I love it for that reason. But they kind of they're still big indie rock college radio stars, but never really had a big hit after that. A couple others on my list that I'm not going to really bother getting into too much. I wanted to put at least one Texas band on my list. Good job, Dan, for putting Fastball on there. Austin, Texas represent. But
also Dynamite Hack represent Austin, Texas.
Oh, really?
Are they from Austin?
Wow.
Oh, yeah. I didn't even know that.
You guys.
Sweet. So you're double whammy with the Texas bands.
Pow, pow.
But I've got the Toadies on here, or Toadies, I believe, without the.
Yeah.
The hit was Possum Kingdom, and they were kind of this post-grunge pop rock band that kind of came out of nowhere with this hit, with some just crazy guitar sounds, and the time signature is nuts. If you listen to it and you try to if you're like me, you kind of tap along to the song on your steering wheel as you're driving, it actually oscillates between a 4/4 time and a 7/4. It's a really unique time signature, and you'll notice it because I'm going to sound stupid doing it, but the drum beat is like boom boom bam boom boom bam boom boom bam boom bam boom bam boom boom. So there's like there's that kind of extra missing part of the beat, and that's that 7/4 part, but it goes back and forth between those two. So it's already off kilter. And then the song itself, the material is based on this lake in North Texas where there was rumored to be like occult activity and this religious sect that would immolate themselves on the shores of the lake. And so it was just really kind of strange. But it was a radio hit, and a lot of people bought the album off of that. And it's a great album, but they never really went anywhere, at least commercially, after that. And I thought they deserved a mention. Last but not least, I'll mention Stereo MCs. They had a hit in the early 90s called Connected. I was more of a fan of their later 90s album, Deep Down and Dirty. And they're really kind of unique. Definitely worth checking out if you've never heard of them. They're a British band that is real, kind of funk, hip hop oriented. And he's got just that real thick British accent. I'm not good with like the regional accents. So I don't know what part, but they're really fun to listen to, and great driving music, great just jamming out music. And they had a hit with Connected, and they made a bunch of albums after that. They have a great live album that they recorded at BBC. But if anyone has even heard of them, they've heard Connected, and that's pretty much it.
Cool.
And that's me. That's my top 5.
So for my picks, I mean, I went all over the place, like pop wise. I've said it before a bunch of times, and I'll say it a million times, that I'm a sucker for a good pop song. The 90s has so many great things to dig through, and so many terrible things. It has Who Let the Dogs Out. It has the Macarena and Mambo Number 5, and like
I had that album.
I'm Blue, Dabba Dee Dabba Die. Like we did a lot of weird things in the 90s, guys.
Yes.
Which one did you say you had, Dan?
Mambo Number 5. Lou Bega.
You had the Lou Bega album.
I did.
He did.
Man,
And
buying CDs for a song. Oof. Man,
there were not any other good songs on that entire album.
I'm sure there weren't. Yeah.
If I remember, Dan, you actually started to get into more traditional mambo music and would listen to that instead of Lou Bega after a while.
Yeah.
Just like I would come home from, hanging out with my friends or whatever, and I would go upstairs to the bedroom, and I would hear like dun 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 dun, dun, like this crazy mambo music, and I'm like, Dan, what are you listening to?
Amazing.
It was mambo.
Well, because we all went through like a minor swing phase with Zoot Suit Riot and all that,
sure
Squirrel Nut Zippers, Cherry Poppin' Daddies, like all that. Like that happened for a hot 3 months or whatever it was. Brian Setzer, though, like obviously Stray Cats legend, and
The one standout.
had a nasty hit, like a great hit during that time. And I'm not going to put him on this list because he's not a one-hit wonder, but the Brian Setzer Orchestra technically had that one hit. I wanted to touch on Gangsta's Paradise just because I think it's a crazy one. Like it won a Grammy. He beat Dr. Dre, Tupac, and Biggie to win a Grammy for like rap song of the year. I mean, it's a great song, but like that was it. That was it.
Wow.
But so a couple of the ones that I decided to go with, I started off with 9 Days. I don't know if everybody knows this song. This is a story of a girl. Long Island Band. That song was just infectious. It was everywhere. I again, it's one of those just really well written pop songs that my band when we were jamming around, like it was easy to play, it was easy to sing, and it was super super catchy, and you knew that if there were a couple girls who were listening to your band, they knew the song, and everybody was singing along. It was so good, dude.
I hear it everywhere, even to this day.
Yeah,
I'll hear it in the grocery store. You know what I mean? It's a certified hit.
Yeah. It's kind of like Edwin McCain's "I'll Be." Where it just like it's stuck around somehow. It's always there. Yeah. Another one that did that was Eagle Eye Cherry's "Save Tonight." I still hear that in Target, like every once in a while that'll bubble up again.
I still hear it in my head.
Yeah, it's so catchy. It's so catchy. And
the dude's voice, man.
When you're watching or listening to a song and you kind of say in your head, like, am I seeing the start of something? Like, I remember seeing like Katy Perry's first song or whatever and being like, is this going to be a thing? Like, is she? And now she's a monster celebrity, right? And I remember seeing and hearing this song and I'm like, oh, okay, this is going to be a guy that you'll hear from and he'll have a bunch of hits and stuff after that. Crickets. Like I don't know what happened to him. Like it's so crazy. I'm sure he's still out there doing something, but like never had a follow up anywhere near this. I also am a sucker for Nordic pop's influence or the Nordic influence on pop music. And dude, Barbie Girl, like it is annoyingly catchy. I threw myself on a bed of nails and introduced this to my daughter recently, and she loves this song. She's 6 years old, and so like it's new to her. It feels new to her. Like these people are still young in the music video to her, and so she wants to listen to this song on repeat right now, which I think is indicative of a jam. Like it's an earworm. Sure. It's a legitimate smash. Yeah. Same thing
Barbie. Let's go party. Y'all need to sing more on the podcast. That needs to
I don't want to get sued though.
Yeah. Chumbawamba. Like Chumbawamba's
man.
Dude, Tub Thumping is such a good song, and they are such a weird band. They're a political group. They're a political group from Europe who like used their influence then from this to like go and make protest songs and statements. And if you listen to the rest of that album, it is very much like left-leaning progressive propaganda in pop song form. And even this song, the only reason that this song wasn't contentious at all is because it was supposed to be like a labor anthem. It's like the everyman goes to the pub after he's spent 12 hours in a factory and he drinks a whiskey drink and he drinks a vodka drink. Man, but this is a song I remember like just singing years later with friends drunk in a bar. This is that song that just like it somehow defined like pop rock of the like sub pop rock of that era.
Did this song have a verse? Or was it just the same
kind
lyrics?
of?
Well, it's pissing the night away.
Pissing the night away. He drinks the whiskey drink. I get knocked down.
He drinks the vodka drink.
And it's just that on repeat, right?
Yeah, it's three things. It's I'm pissing the night away, where she sings it, and then the guy says he drinks a whiskey drink.
Right. I was just trying to remember
the anthem.
If there were more lyrics than that, and apparently there's
not really.
Negative. No, not
and
at
you
all.
You hit the nail on the head. It's basically modeled after like a traditional drinking song.
Oh, sure.
Like it's got the whole repetitive coda and the same lyrics throughout, and it's a sing along, you know what I mean? And it's about drinking, and so it's a modern day pub song.
It is, and it worked. I remember, getting sloshed and singing the song, and you can kind of remember the lyrics because there aren't that many.
Yep, absolutely.
Yep.
And then I have a soft spot for Eve 6. I actually wound up loving their second album. Like my band played almost every song on that second album. That was just like stuff that we jammed to. But that first album, Open Road Song was my jam on that first album, and Leech. But Inside Out, I remember seeing the music video for that. And he's like an angsty guy sitting in a diner or something like that, and it's raining, and the girl breaks his heart, and he's singing about putting his heart in a blender, and I'm like,
That
like
chorus-
that just screamed to me.
The
Ugh.
chorus
Yep.
of that song is such an insane earworm, dude.
It's so good.
So good.
So good. And I don't know if you guys have followed the like Twitter sphere around them in the past few months, but like he has just gotten so meta and so smart, and he just tweets at people saying like, yeah, this is good, but have you heard the Heart in a Blender song? And he'll like get into it like with Joe Biden. Like, he's like, hey, Joe Biden, have you heard the Heart in a Blender song? Like, it's so funny. If you haven't checked it out, they're worth a follow on there. They threw out some new music recently. They're doing stuff, but like they embrace where their kind of heritage is from, and their legacy.
Awesome.
But yeah, I mean, so the last question I'll leave for you guys then is, you know, I kind of glossed over these things. You know, we've got those big dance prom songs. I feel like Life is a Highway is one that you like heard at everything, right? Baby Got Back is played at everything. The Macarena is played at everything.
I'll tell you, I film weddings for a living.
Right.
And so every wedding plays the exact same playlist.
No matter who the DJ is.
Doesn't matter who the DJ is, doesn't matter the ethnicity of who's getting married, doesn't matter, like it's the same. It's Bruno Mars and it's Katy Perry and it's 90s jams and it's Backstreet Boys. And it's that stuff. That's what it is. And like Macarena is back. All that stuff is back now because we're all getting married.
Yeah, I feel like No Diggity, I like the way you work it. Like that still comes up a bunch.
90s R&B is in there a ton. So you're totally right.
All my life, like it's hard to like. All my life is Casey and JoJo are technically a one-hit wonder. Jodeci was a huge group, and they were part of Jodeci, right? But on their own, they're a one-hit wonder. But that was the song that like you bought for your high school, your like ninth grade girlfriend as a present. You got her the Casey and JoJo CD to be like, I really love you, you know, like I love you as much as these guys are singing about love, you know? Like,
yep. I don't have an original thought, so this is how I feel about you.
That's
that
exactly
these people
what
did.
it is. Yeah. But so is the I'm not going to say the worst, but is the Macarena one of the toughest ones to digest, or is it I'm Blue? Like I've gone back to a bunch of these things, and it's just like there's some stuff. Ice Baby, like there's a. I mean, we talked about Snow's Informer or Bad Boy, What You Gonna Do? Like all of these weird songs from the 90s, man. There's some tough stuff out there to kind of digest, but I don't know. There's still everything on this list is catchy. Everything I went through, I guess Who Let the Dogs Out. I feel like Who Let the Dogs Out, we can, I don't know. Yeah. I don't know if I need to hear that ever again.
That one's up there.
It's horrible.
Yeah.
I don't think
do you have any ideas on this?
I don't think I could ever listen to Blue again in its entirety.
I went back thinking that it would be like a fun nostalgia thing, and I killed it after about 45 seconds.
And the thing is, like, the chorus is okay, like, blue, and then you hear the verse, and you're like, what is happening to this song?
I live in a blue house, and everything's blue.
And, like, are you talking or singing? And what happened to your chord progression?
Yeah.
It's like they know they had a good chorus, but they literally had nothing for the verse.
They had nothing for the rest of their careers, apparently, too.
Yeah.
So. Right.
That's one.
I mean, that's tough. And you know what's funny is this was my upbringing to try to think of the annoying one-hit wonders. I'm actually going through some of the Weird Al songs because
he hit them. He did.
So, like, I'm gonna go with "Achy Breaky Heart" by Billy Ray Cyrus.
Oh, that's a good one.
Still play that at every white person wedding.
Of course they do.
Yeah, and I'd never want to hear it again, ever.
Yeah.
For as long as I live. And I've probably not heard this song for 20 plus years, but I still don't want to hear it. So that's my answer to that one.
Cool.
But I know we try to keep it positive, but there's always going to be those songs that just...
Billy Ray Cyrus is fine.
It just feels like nails on a chalkboard.
You can hate something and still be positive.
Yeah.
It's an objectively catchy song. It was huge. It was a huge hit. So, you know, I can't knock him too hard, but I just don't want to hear the song ever again.
Yeah. And then do we say that Vanilla Ice is a one-hit wonder? Because he did have Ninja Rap. Like, Ice Ice Baby was big, but Ninja Rap is fantastic.
I think Vanilla Ice counts as a one-hit wonder. But
was Ninja Rap a hit, or like was it in a movie? You know,
I mean, it was in the movie, Dan.
Would that have been a hit otherwise?
No. But it was in
it was
Ninja
written
Turtles
for the
2,
movie.
which is fantastic.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it doesn't necessarily count because it was written for the movie.
Yeah. I just like
Maybe that's
Turtles
being
2. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
If I'm watching either one of those, it's Turtles 2
Yeah. Turtles 2 is fantastic.
for sure.
Super Shredder.
All right. Any final thoughts?
I think we hit it, guys.
Granddaddy.
Hell yeah.
Granddaddy's
My final thought.
Granddaddy is good. That's a good final thought. My final thought is that everybody needs to listen to Super Drag.
And
Liam?
my
per
final
usual.
thought is everyone should wear sunscreen.
Yes.
And if you don't get that, then you're too young.
Don't explain it. Let's just leave it at that.
I'll leave it at that.
But I want to talk about it now. No, just leave it.
We have to end it on that. No, that's it.
The end.
If you know, you know. Well, this has been tremendously fun. Thank you so much for listening to Retro Groove. We are part of the RetroLogic network. Check out the website, retrologic.games, for social links, merchandise, community, and more. Thank you, Dan, for joining us and for starting this whole retro extravaganza thing.
Thank you guys
And
for
thank
taking
you-
it up. Y'all handle this thing, and I love it.
Keep it retro.
Keeping it retro. Well, this is Adam C. signing
Liam
out.
D. Yep.
Liam D.
Dan CC.
Dan
My
CC.
middle name's Carl.
You didn't have to share that. Thanks for coming, Carl.